Over 10 years ago, I built this rack for the clamps that I had at the current time. But as my collection grew over the years, and I quickly ran out of space, I found myself more or less storing them on the floor. But today, that all changes as I'm going to show you how I made this super solid, extremely versatile, but at the same time, equally beautiful clamp rack. Today, on Hinges Creek Woodshop. In an effort to use up some scraps, I cobbled together some live edge cutoffs I had lying around. And while I let those glue up, I can get to work on the triangle braces. These can be whatever dimension, but I wanted to fit at least 4 parallel clamps deep. I then split the 2 pieces at the bandsaw, and then over to the table saw to finalize the corners. Now, to cut the long side or hypotenuse of the triangle, I lined up my marks with the kerf and then positioned some blocks around the board to ensure repeatability. I rated my thin scraps to select some pieces to edge band each brace. Completely unneeded, but definitely on brand for this over-the-top clamp rack. And while those set up, I got to work cutting the cleats that will attach to the wall. I made mine 3 inches tall, and you'll see why in a little bit. Cleaned up the sharp edges, and then it was back to the braces to finish edge banding the remaining sides. I flushed the edges up with the face at the router table. And then it's back to the table saw to trim off the overhang. And you guessed it, I'll have to repeat this step for the other sides, so a word of advice, don't mess with this. You could save a ton of time by using solid hardwood, but is it really worth it in the end? We will see. It is a shop project after all. I do, however, like trying different methods as practice on shop furniture. I know, a ton to go through for just a clamp rack, but let me know in the comments down below, would you do something this extreme for your clamp rack? I'm actually pretty happy with the way it's turning out, and every time I look at it, I'll remember the effort that I went through to make it look so nice. So anyway, comment down below. Let me know. Would you do it? After letting the pieces dry, it was time to get back to the router table and flush everything up. And then table saw to get everything trimmed up, and then believe it or not, these braces are finally ready to be sanded and set aside. Now I can turn my attention back to the live edge panels, trimming them to final width at the table saw. A quick sanding for all of the pieces, and then I can begin assembling each of the holders. I used brad nails to hold these pieces together, and then came back with screws to reinforce the joints. These pieces will be holding a decent amount of weight after all. I made sure to attach the cleat with glue and screws, since this is where a lot of the force will be pulling from. Now, this corner of the shop has become a bit of a catch-all, so I need to get all this junk out of the way before I can get this up and on the wall. Then I can go ahead and locate my studs just to make sure, even though I have some marks from a previous installation. Finding the perfect spot to make sure I have enough clearance, and then we're all set to get this cleat attached to the wall. I like to use Fastcap's 3-inch powerhead screws. After the first screw was installed, I came back with a Forstner bit to recess the hole. That will allow the head of the screw to sit flush with the cleat. And you're probably wondering why the hell this cleat has a bevel on the top and the bottom. That's the secret to this being a rock-solid clamp rack. In just a moment, I will make the locking mechanism that will utilize that second bevel. I'm actually going to go ahead and replace this end section right here because it's a little wiggly and not nearly as supported as it needs to be. So what I plan on doing is just building another section right here so it'll be better supported, and I don't think I can fit any clamps over on this side, but at least I'll feel better about this end being supported. So with the special features of this clamp rack, I'll probably go into detail in another video based on the French cleat options that I used within this clamp rack. There's a couple features that are special to this, and I think it makes everything super versatile, and you can swap things at the touch of a button basically. So anyway, let's go ahead and get these pieces finished off, and then this clamp rack will be almost done. I started by routing a channel in a block to allow for a bolt to slide up and down, and then installed that at the back of the holders, and a block at the bottom for yet another special feature of this clamp rack. Now to get to work on the actual lock that will clamp on the second bevel. I drilled a recessed hole to fit a carriage bolt, and then hammered it into place to lock it into the wood. Now if you don't have a 3D printer, you can purchase a knob that works best for you, but I wanted to keep these as low profile as possible. So I found a knurled knob on Thingiverse that allows for a 1/4-20 nut to be press fit into the knob. And just like that, easy to lock in place and easy to move if things change in the future. Here I'm installing a reverse cleat within the holder. And then over to the table saw to make some plates that will fit within those pockets. I also needed to make a recess to allow a place for the knob to sit when these are installed. This is easily achieved over at the drill press, going about half the depth of the material. And now I can actually get to work on making some accessories for these plates. I chose to make these out of hardwood considering I had enough scraps lying around that these profiles would fit within. I wanted to incorporate this quick release pin to allow for the plates to easily lock in place, and therefore can be removed just as easily. I drilled this hole through both pieces to allow for perfect alignment. With that in place, I can now reinstall the plunger and the spring and lock it in place with the ring to finish off the locking mechanism. I also installed another mechanism in one of the holders just to keep my options open in the future. Now onto the next holder, I needed a place to put my ratchet clamps for my track saw. This will be more of a permanent holder. To do that though, I swapped over to my flat top blade to give me a nice flat dado within the piece. Basically cutting a set of 3 channels for the clamps to slide into. The only problem I see with this is the fact that I have 3 slots and only 2 clamps, so I guess I need to get another one or else it's going to drive me nuts. And for this last accessory, I needed to take some measurements for these F-style clamps. Going back to the clamp rack that I showed you at the beginning, this is a very similar style, but a little more robust that will allow the clamps to sit facing outward within the large holders. This will allow me to fit 4 across, thus keeping my OCD at bay. And at long last, I can now get my clamps off the floor and into their new home. Alright, so there you have it. A beautiful, strong, and versatile clamp rack made from walnut. Definitely happy to have this one done, as it's been over a year in the making at least since I cut the initial parts. So happy to have this one in the books. Let me know if you have any questions or comments down below. Do you like the look? Do you like the versatility? Maybe you think I'm a maniac for using walnut? I know I do. Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to see more, because I have plenty of videos coming out. But until then, I will see you guys in the next one.